G'day guys, timer is on. If you're watching the video, you would realize that I look exactly the same as I did yesterday, because spoilers, I've actually just gone straight into recording a second episode, because as I said, heading up the coast for a triathlon this weekend, so it might be a bit tricky to record an episode while I'm away, so I thought I'd just record it now and then continue straight into to be able to upload it on Saturday. And that way I can kind of keep talking about warm-ups as I was yesterday, which came off on the poll on the Step and Injury Prevention Facebook group, where Tarash has voted for warm-ups. So if you would like input into what I talk about, then head across to the Facebook group and either ask a question, that would be great, or vote in the poll so I know what people want to know. Do it. And while you're there, maybe click the link to go to my YouTube channel, which I've set up as well. And if you could be a subscriber there, that would be really nice, because then I'll be able to change the URL from a series of numbers and letters to something that's a bit more readable, and hopefully start to get some viewership there. So that would be greatly appreciated. So yesterday I was talking about warm-ups and how one of the really good reasons to do them is to get the energy systems needed to be comfortable while you're running, fired up and ready to go, and to be able to maintain your output that you want. But there are other good reasons that warming up is a good idea, and part of being able to execute the intensity that you want to do, basically when muscles are firing, part of it's going to be, as I've talked about a bit before with adaptation, part of it is, I guess, the muscle fibers and their size, but also a lot of it is how your basically neural input. So you've got muscle motor units, which are basically lots of different muscle fibers that are in bundles of different fiber types. And then there are also different sizes where basically your body's really good at being efficient. So if we can get away with it, ideally we use the lowest energy intensive fibers, and then if we need them, then we use the really energy intensive ones as that are more powerful but less efficient. So when we're getting started with exercise, particularly with weight training, if you want to be lifting heavy weights, and this is relevant for running if you do want to be running fast, and a lot of people, I guess, are going to be walking or jogging with Steppen, but there are probably quite a few people who have got runners because it's really expensive to get anything else. I mean, it's already expensive to get runners, but expensive to go up to anything higher than that. And so the intensity that you need to run for the runners is probably quite a intense thing for a lot of people, not a zone 2 cardio like I've talked about before, but actually more of a near maximal effort. And you might be breaking it up into a series of shorter runs. And so to be able to comfortably work towards your higher intensities, basically getting your neural drive up and firing to be able to access these larger motor units is a really good way of and so warming up can be a really good way of getting that going. So part of the other things that will increase it are when you are in states of extreme fight or flight. So when you're in a adrenaline state, they've done great I mean, by great I mean terrible studies back before ethics boards were implemented in universities, where they'd surprise people by setting off a gun behind them. They also did yelling at people, and they also took amphetamines, so things like cocaine, before doing maximal efforts, and showed that increased neural excitability facilitated higher outputs. So the kind of takeaways there are that if you're in a really you've been at your desk all day and you need to get out for a run, and you're in this kind of sluggish state, then trying to suddenly go from being in that sluggish, low excitability state to then doing a fairly hard effort exercise-wise, that can be really tough. So a warm-up is really useful for basically getting your system primed to get yourself ready to perform at the level that you need to be. So doing things like some strength exercise and potentially even some jumps. So like you might do some air squats and then some squat jumps is a great way of getting your system sort of primed to, because with jumping you have to put into quite a high intensity, and that sort of gets that neural excitability going and that activation really going. So jumping, hopping, skipping can be quite a good way of getting warmed up and ready to go. Another reason why warm-ups can be useful are for things like when you have a tendinopathy, so your Achilles tendinopathy, which I've talked about, was that episode 15 maybe, so a couple of days ago, where one of the characteristics of this style of injury is that it's often really sore when you wake up and when you first start exercising, and then as you get going, as you warm up and you get moving and use it more, it becomes much more comfortable. So warm-ups can be a great way of kind of preloading the tendons if you do have that, getting some load through there to basically get them past that point of being really painful where it feels like you've got a knife stabbing you on every step. Doing some calf raises or hanging over the edge of a step, doing an isometric contraction. So that's one where you're not moving. But yeah, otherwise doing calf raises and maybe into some skipping is a nice way of sort of getting your tendon warmed up, ready to go, and running. So that's another nice way, like a good reason why warm-ups can be really useful, particularly if you've got that sort of injury background. So from an injury prevention side of things, there's not like heaps of research to show that, doing warm-ups are going to be overly protective, but sort of a reason why you might think about doing things like the squat jumps or even just air squats, so bodyweight squats, is trying to get your muscles all kind of firing and working together. So basically, like a running is this compound movement where it's very much multi-joint and your muscles all have to fire and time together. So doing some like basic sort of strength stuff to get everything up and going and working efficiently together can be good. But again, like it's not going to be, for like a vast majority of cases, the reason why you would or wouldn't get an injury. So I guess to talk about practically what I think is best for a warm-up is something really actionable. Is I really recommend, if you can, ideally, like get started with a walk and then gradually like build that up to a brisk walk, and then from there start to build up your intensity. So you're going into a bit of a jog and then ramp your way up into the exercise you want to do. The reason why I like this is because it is dead simple. It's you can't get it too wrong. It gets your aerobic system firing, turning over, like that steam train analogy that I talked about. It also gives you a chance to get your muscles to sort of wake up, switch on. That gradual increase in intensity will get that neural excitability going, and then it should be much more comfortable by the time you are up and going. So that would be like the dead simplest, easiest way of getting started. So and what I'd say for a warm-up, if you do have something like Achilles tendinopathy, as I said, doing some calf raises before you get started. Otherwise, if you have like a patellar tendinopathy, which is in your knee or hip, then doing some loading exercises. So for the knee, it might be some kind of knees over toes squatting. For your hip, it might be a slide plank where you're loading up that lateral hip muscle. So basically just doing something where it's like simple strength loading is a nice way to go. But yeah, as you can see, it's like not overly complicating things. It's just getting started. Other things that you might consider are, if you are working at a high intensity, as I said before, doing something like squat jumps or putting on some really intense tunes to get yourself sort of in that excited state. That does help with being able to produce that higher output. And if you are, again, going into that sort of higher intensity, then doing things like sort of some run-throughs where you're working up to like kind of almost a sprint, having a rest, turning around, running back and like having a 20 meter there and 20 meter back. That can be a nice way of doing things. Like that, I think running technique drills can be a good reason to incorporate a bit of a warm-up, where if you know there's some features of your running that you really want to improve, like, if you, or not necessarily improve, but change, like if you're working on taking smaller steps, higher cadence, lighter steps, lifting your knees more, all these things that I've talked about in previous running technique episodes. If there are certain things that you are trying, it can be a bit hard to do them on the fly. So starting a warm-up where you do have just some 20 meters, there's the timer, 20 meters of really focused work can be a great way of getting your brain ready to then incorporate that into your run. And with learning skills, it is all about frequency. So like small amounts often is how you get good at something. So having a structured warm-up where you do focus on those technique drills can be useful for that sense. But for injury prevention, to wrap it all up, it's not as important as so many people think. The most important thing is the getting your training loading right between your macro and micro loading, as I've talked about before, and not doing too much too soon. And the biggest thing for long-term adaptation is being consistent and frequent. So don't put up giant barriers to getting started. Keep it simple and do what you want to do often. Great, guys. Hope you had hope that was helpful. And if it has been, let me know. Feedback is really nice, and consider maybe sending a GST or two to my Solana address, which is on the description of this episode, wherever you're watching it. And remember, you can watch it on YouTube. I'll have the link in the description. You can listen via a podcast, and you can also do it on the Facebook page where I upload it as well. And yeah, I would love your input as to what you find useful, what you like, what you don't like, what topics you'd like me to cover. And yeah, that would be great. So hopefully you guys are having a great weekend, and I'll see you tomorrow.